I'm 18 and male. I have an extremely large Alsatian dog, which needs to be walked 3 times a day for about an hour. I'm a large guy, and of the day of this encounter, I was wearing an extremely large padded-in black leather jacket with black skinny jeans. This is important later on. My house is close to a large state park. I walk my dog here daily. I always take a secluded path off the main path. There are 2 of these paths which run parallel to each other. They're about 20 meters apart. One path runs adjacent to a river, over which there is an abandoned house and manor. The other path is higher up and overlooks the path next to the river. This is also important. Now to get to my story. I left my house and started walking my dog at around 1 p.m. I take the main path until reaching the secluded paths. I take the path closest to the river so that my dog can go swimming if he wants to. As I get around 1 mile in, I hear people talking from up and around the corner of the path. I put my dog on a tight leash as I walk slowly up the hill, with a 10-meter drop down to the river and around the corner. The hill's gradient begins to slowly decline. As I look for the source of the noise, I see a lady in a pink blazer sitting on the ground, talking to another man just sitting there. As I approached, I realized something was wrong here. The woman was smiling. The man was sitting halfway down the hill, almost in the river, with his bike upturned next to him. It appeared to be some sort of accident. The path wasn't slippery, but it was steep and narrow. The drop at this section of the path was around 8 meters of sharp rock into a white river. The pink lady had the following conversation with the man. "Someone's coming." The man grumbles something. "How did you know that?" the lady said. "My dog started crying and walked just off the path to go investigate, but I pull him back. I ask if everything's okay and she gives no response. She just smiles and looks toward the older balding man. We stare at each other for a second, and I get a better look at her before continuing to walk down the path. Let me describe this lady in even more detail. She wore a bright pink blazer with camouflage trousers and large hunting boots. She had to be in at least her late 40s. If any one of you have seen the Harry Potter films, just think of Dolores Umbridge and you have a good idea of what I witnessed. After 10 minutes, the path forks back or diverges to continue on. I decide to walk back, not on the same path. I end up back at the main path. I start to walk away back home, but I get a feeling in my gut that for some reason I should go back. After all, that man could have been injured, and was just intimidated by my sudden presence or my grotesquely large dog. As I walk back down the path, I see this pink lady stop 2 boys, no older than 12, and say something about him being stuck there and that he needs help. She would have had to leave the man there. Instead of going to the path where the man was situated, I took the back path which overlooked the path below and the river. As I look down, I'm shocked. This man is moving his bike to a steeper part of the path and lies down as if to pretend he's injured. The lady was luring these boys to this man who was completely capable of movement and who had just staged an accident. I tried to phone 101, the non-emergency number in my country, but I had no minutes left. The pink lady was nowhere to be seen. I decide I have to loop back around and walk down that path. It takes me about 10 minutes to do so. As I get around there, the lady and man are arguing. The conversation went something like this. "Now where are we meant to go? If you weren't such a spooky bitch, those boys would have come in. You were the one who said we couldn't tackle the big guy." At this moment, I go into a panic. I make my presence clear and approach them quickly. I have to get past them as quickly as I can. I pull my dog closer to me, and as I'm passing them on the narrow path, less than 1 meter in length, the man gives me the dirtiest look, while the lady gives me the toothiest yellow smile I have ever seen. I'm not afraid to admit it. I was pretty scared. I run as quick as I can to get out of the woods. When I do get out, reach a member of the local government while taking a walk past the parking lot and tell him what I witnessed and the conversation I overheard. Fortunately, the boys the lady was talking to had already reported the suspicious activity. He tells me the children had told him that the lady was claiming her husband had fallen off the path and needed some help. The boys didn't fall for it. He had called the police as soon as the boys had told him, and I soon left. I wouldn't be returning to that part of the woods for a long time. So, creepy pink lady, if you ever see this, I hope you got caught for whatever sick thing you were plotting. When I was a junior in college, my friend invited me to attend a ballet with her and a teenage girl she knew from home. The girl was part of an educational advancement program that had placed her in a nearby high school and provided free room and board in a group home with other students. All of her housemates had gone home for fall break, so my friend thought it would be nice to take her out for a girls' night away from that big empty house, with only her program advisor for company. It was about midnight when we got back from the ballet. Since we were in possession of a 16-year-old overdue for curfew, it seemed important to get her home as quickly as possible. The girl's house was fairly close to a student shuttle stop on the far end of campus, so we decided we'd walk her home before doubling back. While moving up a footpath that leads into town, we realized her house backed up to the Arboretum on the edge of campus. Rather than walk all the way around, we decided to just cross through. We didn't have flashlights, but my friend's iPhone flash could serve in a pinch, and the stretch of woods was sandwiched between the brightly lit windows of our dorms and those houses across the way. Several minutes into our hike, we lost sight of the footpath and the dorms. It was much darker now, and my friend was less certain we were walking the right way, so we paused to check our location. As we were all huddled, motionless, around my friend's phone, we heard a twig crack behind us. We turned around to find a young woman, presumably a student, standing a few yards away. Her hoodie was pulled up over her head, obscuring most of her face. She seemed enormous, but given that I'm 5'3" and was flanked by two 5-foot ballet dancers, the threshold for enormity was low. She was silent for a moment, then asked us where we were going. "We're heading into town," my friend answered. "Where are you going?" "What do you need in town?" "We're taking her home." My friend pointed to the teenage girl. "Where does she live?" "Not too far, but where are you going?" "Do you know how to get there?" She started to walk closer to us, and the teenage girl grabbed a fistful of my coat and inched closer to me. "Yeah, we figured it out. Are you going towards campus or into town?" "Which way is it?" "Her house." She was now within a few feet. Her approach had slowed, but not yet stopped. My friend quickly blurted out, "Just this way. Good night." She was bluffing, but any direction away from this student seemed like the right direction, so we went along. The plan was a failure. Within seconds, I could hear her crunching the leaves behind me. She was following close enough to touch me, and I sped up, certain I was about to get a knife in my spine if I didn't get away. When my friend saw me rushing, she turned back to see that the student was following us. She grabbed the teenager's hand, and the three of us began to run. We never turned back, so I'm not sure how long the student followed us. Eventually we figured out we were running the right way, when the teenager yelled out, "That's it," and led us to a driveway where we could huff and puff ourselves back to normal, under a garage-mounted floodlight. The girl's program advisor was home, waiting up for her missing ward, and made us each a cup of tea while we waited for the campus police to drive out and escort me and my friend back to our dorm. Once safely in the back seat of a college security video, we told the officer why we'd wanted a ride instead of walking back. He said that this was the third time this semester he had picked up students running scared from the woods after encountering a strange girl in a hoodie. They dispatched officers to look into it before, but they never managed to find anyone. He figured it was a student on a stroll from the dorms, and that we had nothing to worry about. As soon as we got out of the car, my friend got a text from the teenager. She was certain she'd seen the student outside her window, but when the program advisor went out to investigate, nobody was there. I never found out what happened, but I really hope the creepy girl in the woods was not the same student whose body was found out there a year later. I hope she had nothing to do with that at all. I'm 24, female, and from the UK. Despite a few creepy instances as a child, there's only been one time in my adult life that I've truly felt primal fear. My apologies if it's a little long, but trust I'm being concise as possible and need to explain the surroundings a little first. I live in a village in the middle of the English countryside. To paint an accurate picture of its size, it has a population of 4,000, but feels more like 1,000 due to its spread out nature and being surrounded on all sides by lots of fields, farms, and woods. They eventually connect to a pretty famous forest. It's kinda in the middle of nowhere, and because of this has notoriously bad phone and internet connections. Having lived here all my life, I know the place like the back of my hand. I know where all the public footpaths through the woods and fields are, where they connect, which are shortcuts, where to cross deep streams and the like. I've gone on walks in this area throughout my childhood, with parents and alone as an adult. Nothing bad had ever happened, and I felt safe here. This story takes place last summer in July, after I moved back home from university, and had yet to get a job and smoked a lot of weed. A habit which my parents despised, and which I tried to keep hidden from them by going for evening walks, multiple pre-rolled joints hidden away in my hoodie pocket. As usual, this day, they both got home at 5 p.m. We had dinner but chatted for a while longer than usual, as my mum had quite a hectic day and was telling me all about it. Because of this, I ended up heading out for my walk an hour later than routine, around 7 p.m. But it was still summer and the sun was still shining, so honestly I didn't really notice that it would start getting dark while I was still out. The woodland closest to my house is less than 5 minutes away, and you enter through a gate into a farmer's field. You can see across the open area quite far, until the first set of small woods obscures your view. That's where I was heading, as I knew this track takes under 2 hours, and leads back onto the same path I was standing on now. More than enough time to smoke the 3 joints in my pocket, and for the smell to leave my clothing, or so I thought. This entire area is very popular for dog walkers, so it's not too unusual to see other people while you're out and about. And as this is a village, everybody says hello to everybody. I lit my first joint and started walking. I'm just in my own world for a little while, until I was less than 100 feet before the entrance to the woods. An elderly man was coming out of them, throwing a ball for his collie dog. I finished my joint and stubbed it out. As I got closer, I realized it was John, who lived on the road next to mine and knew my grandpa. We stopped and said hello, and I stroked his dog, Max. While talking, I see another man coming out of the woods. No dog. Bright green jacket. Very tall and had a good 10 years on me age-wise. Me and John chat another minute and say goodbye. He warns me not to stay out here too long, as it'll start getting dark soon. True to this, the sky was bright pink and orange, and the sun was indeed beginning to set. I hadn't really noticed. I continued on down the path towards the man. When we were nearly passing each other, I look up to make brief eye contact, smile, and say hello like everyone here does, even if you don't recognize the person. My eyes instantly met his. He was already looking at me. His dark eyes locked onto mine, but he wasn't smiling. I didn't know this person at all, but I could tell something was wrong. It was in his eyes. I swallowed my politeness and looked at the ground as we passed. I quickened my pace a little, and before entering the woods, slyly sneaked a look back. The guy was still walking in the same direction, following John. I felt relieved and laughed, cursed the weed for making me paranoid, while lighting up another joint and started walking into the woods. It takes about 30 minutes to follow the path of the woods to the end. The pathway exit opened into another field that led into another set of woods. The sky was now violet, the dimming light having been obscured to me by the trees. I was already smoking my last joint and was near the entrance to the second set of woods when I felt it. Fear. Complete, crippling, absolute fear worked its way like electric currents through every layer of my flesh. I had never felt anything like it before or since, but I knew what it was. I whipped around. Standing at the exit of the first set of woods was the same man. I could still make out his bright green jacket in the fading light. He fucking doubled back, and very quickly too. I had looked back several times while in those trees, and he hadn't been there. For a second I froze, as did he. He knew I'd seen him. To sprint the distance between us would take him about 5 minutes, and he was obviously in good shape. I threw the spliff and fucking bolted into the woods, the only way I could go. I didn't dare to look behind me. I sprinted for a couple of minutes before taking a sharp turn left off the path and into the trees, hoping to throw him off a bit, but I couldn't see a fucking thing. The light was already darkening, and the trees made it 100 times worse, especially as I was now in the thick of them. Their branches catching on my clothes like fingers, whipping and scratching my bare legs so bad that I bled. I ran and ran, my lungs protesting in pain, hating me for smoking so much, while my heart was throwing itself against my ribcage trying to escape. I couldn't anymore. I threw myself on the ground behind a particularly thick trunk, my back against it, knees to my chest, hand thrown over my mouth to stifle my labored breathing, desperately trying to pump air into my lungs for the next sprint. I listened for the first time. A few seconds pass silently. Then I hear him. Heavy footfall snapping twigs behind me, and about 20 feet to my left. I dare not look in case he sees me. I have my phone, but I know I have little chance of signal being where I was, and knew that he'd either hear me talking or see the light from the display. I'm not ashamed to say at this point I started to cry. Tears started falling silently down my cheeks. "What the fuck?" I hear a deep voice exclaim. "Where are you? I know you're here. I saw you." I have to clasp both hands across my mouth to stop my scream from escaping. I can hear him moving around. I panic, and I find enough courage to slowly peek from behind the tree. He was about 10 feet behind me, less than 20 feet to the left, with his back towards me. I moved back, and my eyes search the area around me. I pick up a pretty heavy rock. I carefully check on him again. His back is still turned, but he's searching through the trees, hunched down lower to the ground now. I make a snap decision, and with everything I had left, I threw the rock behind me and to the right. It clattered through the branches of the trees and made one hell of a noise. I watched him immediately bolt in his direction, laughing. He fucking laughed. I paused a little, hearing his footsteps get quieter, though I thought I wouldn't be so visible to him if I moved and threw myself forward. I ran, trying to put as much distance between us as possible, but I was also aware that I was getting further and further away from home. I knew there had to be a stream somewhere close. If I found the stream, I could follow it, as it borders the land and ran parallel to some of the footpaths. I ran and ran until the trees finally cleared, and I can just make out another field through them on the other side. I thank God, and push myself a little bit further till I'm out of the trees, and the ground disappears from below my feet. I go head over shoulders down the stream embankment. I crash into the water below, my mouth open and lungs filling with muddy water. As I sputter it out, I feel relieved to have found the stream, and terrified that he's heard me. My phone is now ruined. I slowly make my way downstream as quiet as possible, listening out for him the whole time as the stream borders the woods, looking up periodically just in case. After a while, maybe half an hour, I noticed the trees begin to thin out and realized this is the edge of the woods where I would have been exiting and where the pathway connected to the original one I'd started on. If I ran, I could get home in less than 20 minutes. As quiet as I could, I dragged myself onto my stomach back up the embankment army style, wanting to stay as low as possible. I peeked over the top. I could just make out the opening of the woods exit path, about 50 feet away. I sat and scanned the forest line for a couple minutes, my eyes trying to make out movement, despite it now being pitch black. Nothing. I couldn't hear anything either. I pushed myself up and sprinted as fast as I could across the field onto the pathway. I knew the gate I'd entered through was in the adjoining field. It really wasn't far. I was so happy. "You fucking bitch," came a screech from across the field. I swear my legs nearly gave out then and there. He'd been waiting for me. I turned my head and saw him sprinting out of the woods at full pelt. I screamed and pushed myself further, tears coating my face. All I could do was run. I crossed into the main field now, and I could see the moonlight shining off the metal gate. My house was just 5 minutes away after that. I had never focused on anything as much as that gate. He was faster than me, and getting closer, screaming at me the whole time about how he was going to slit my throat. I ran and ran, pushing myself up and over the gate, and ran up the road. I dared to look as I made the turning for my road. He was still following me. I raced up my driveway and threw myself through the door, running into the living room, crying and screaming hysterically, pointing behind me towards the door. My dad ran outside while my mom grabbed a hold of me as I collapsed, shaking. As it turns out, my parents had already called the police. As I said, I was going out for an hour or so at 7, and it was now past 12 a.m., and I hadn't answered when they called my now broke phone. Very unlike me. We called the police again to explain, and they came and I gave a full statement. Both my parents and the police were horrified. Nothing like this happens here. There hasn't been a reported rape or murder in the last 100 years, but one look at me, and it was very obvious I was telling the truth. I was covered head to toe in cuts and bruises, soaking wet and covered in mud and blood. I won't go into how this experience changed me. It's depressing. But I will say the thing that scares me the most is that they never even had a suspect. Despite him following me so closely, he was gone by the time my dad ran outside. That guy is still out there, and who knows what he's really capable of. After finding this subreddit today, and after having posted a very abridged version of this story a couple of times in other threads, I asked my mom for the detailed version of the story, and I thought I'd share with you kind people. This happened circa 1971 or 1972, when my mother was about 14 or 15 years old. This incident occurred in a heavily wooded area near Montevallo, Alabama, and close to Birmingham. My mother is the oldest of 5 children. She has 3 sisters and a brother, who is the baby of the family. One weekend in the cooler months of the fall, my grandfather decided to take my whole family, my grandmother, my mother, and all my aunts and uncles, so 7 people total, into the woods for target practice with a rifle. My mother grew up quite poor, and they didn't always live in the best neighborhoods, so my grandfather wanted to teach the kids how to defend themselves with the rifle if need be. Like I said, it was later in the fall, so the trees were bare and there were lots of leaves on the ground. The wooded area was just off a dirt road, so this was a fairly rural area they were in. Since it was so far off the beaten path, my grandfather became startled when he heard the roar of a car engine so deep into the woods. My grandfather remembers the car as being a blue Ford, so it looked a little something like this. Despite the fact that my grandfather had a gun, he totally freaked out and told my grandma and the kids to hide under a pile of leaves in the woods. He hid with them. The man in the driver's seat got out, dragged a woman's body out of the car, and just dumped her there in the woods and drove away. After my grandfather was sure the man had gone, everybody came out of hiding, and the woman sat up and stared them straight in the face. My grandfather asked the woman if she needed help. She said no, and she said that she would be fine. She didn't seem to be injured, and obviously didn't want help. She hadn't put up a fight with the man when he was dragging her out of the car, so she must have known him. So my grandfather cut the shooting lesson short and decided to rush the kids home to safety. Well, on the trail back to the dirt road where my grandfather had parked their car, they passed the man in the blue Ford Galaxy driving out of the woods. My mother looked over and noticed he had a huge machete laying across the front seats right beside him. My grandfather made sure that the man could see that he was carrying a rifle, but everyone was careful not to give away what they had just seen. The man struck up small talk with my grandfather, asked him how he was doing and what they were doing out in the woods. My grandfather explained that he had just taken his family out for some target practice with the rifle. The man told him to have a nice day and continued driving. The next day, my grandfather went back out to that spot in the woods. There was not a body there. However, he did find the woman's wig, her purse, some Kleenex, and a pair of eyeglasses. He collected the items and took them home. According to my grandfather, that area of the woods was known for having shallow graves and being a dump site for bodies. My mother became hysterical when he walked in the front door carrying that stuff. She started screaming, "He killed that lady! He killed her!" My grandfather ended up taking the items down to the police station, but my mom doesn't think anything ever came of it. She never heard anything else about it after that. Well, she did hear one thing about it, I guess. Early the next morning, my grandmother called my mom when she arrived at work, just before the kids left for school. She told them not to take the bus that day, that she would come home and pick them up and drive them to school. When my mother asked why, my grandmother said, "Because that car is waiting for you at the bus stop." What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. I just wanted to thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video, please feel free to leave feedback in the comments below, as well as perhaps like, share, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have a personal story that you'd like to submit, or you'd like to just send me a message, links to all of my social media will be in the description for the video below. This includes my Gmail, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. Go ahead and send me a message on any of those, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include in the tagline what the theme of the story is, if it has any, the name of the story, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. If you're curious at all about the music used in this video, the music is always listed in the description below, in the order which it appears. I also have links to the artists and list the tracks by name, just in case you want to find more of their work. Last but not least, if you have any criticism, please be sure to leave it in the comments below, as I'm always looking for new ways to improve the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.